Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we connect, engage, and empower fathers to be the best dads they can be for their families and communities. And now, your hosts are Bruce Stapleton and Pastor Eli Williams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast. Eli Williams here, and my guest today is a friend of mine. We have been doing some work together around fatherhood, and he has a family with small children. He's got a wife. He is an entrepreneur. He's really involved in his church and in his community. And the question is, how can one person do so much and keep their sanity? So today on the Fathering Strong podcast, Thomas White is my guest today. Welcome, Thomas.
Good to be here, Eli. What an intro, man. Let's not. How does one man do
Did I
so
get it
much?
right?
You got it right.
Okay.
You got it right. I would say I don't consider myself as busy as most people think, but I think in the same way, I am actually pretty busy. And so, yeah, I think you nailed it. You nailed it.
All I know is what I see.
And good to be considered a friend, too.
Well, you are a friend and a colleague. So appreciate all of that.
Yes, sir.
So we'd like to begin with our guests by asking them about their own experience, their fatherhood experience, both their journey with their own dad, good, bad, or indifferent, sometimes ugly.
Yeah.
And also your own experience with your children being a dad. So let's start with you at home growing up with a father.
Yeah, so my fathering story is complicated. And I'll start with the preface that my parents divorced when I was probably 11 or 12 years old. And I am still recovering from those wounds. And so one thing that I've learned is to say good things about my dad, even though I think for the past many, many years, I was hesitant to, even try to remember any good things. But altogether, I think my dad, when he was around, was a good dad. He was my coach in my little league football team. He was my coach in my middle school team. He was there for most sporting events, that we did. He was, I would say the first person who took us traveling. So we would often spend time with family in Cleveland and things like that. I think one of the things that I would probably have desired more from my dad growing up is probably more on the advice end. I feel like, I didn't receive too much wisdom. I didn't receive a lot of advice from him. And so that kind of left me, when my parents split up, we didn't spend a lot of time together. So that kind of left me to I would say, figure out manhood in my teens and in latter years, from media, from men who I would come across, men who I would say, by many measures weren't some of the greatest influences. But that's what I saw and that's what I was used to. And so I didn't try to mimic all of those things because I would like to say that I was, a kid who, even now that I'm not a kid, but I've always tried to be a person who has learned from the experiences of others. And so in those experiences, I saw people do some things and I'm like, I don't want to do that. But then some things I'm like, it seems like this person has some good qualities about them. And I would try to take on some of those things. But I would say overall, some good in my fathering experiences, some bad in my fathering experiences. And I would say there's a song by KB where he talks about his dad. And there's a particular point in the song where, he's talking about going to counseling and one of the diagnosis that the therapist gave him was abandonment, right? You were abandoned. This is why you feel that way. And I identify with that, being in many ways abandoned by my dad. But that song, my daughter, she asked me, why do you play this song so much? And I'm like, well, because I identify with this song. But the song, it's not all bad. Like it has, a point where things seem hopeless, but it all together ends on a note with hope and joy and peace within the person who is communicating within that song. And so altogether, that's what I'm pursuing, is healing and peace and wholeness in my own fatherhood, in my own experience with my father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to sing a little bit of the song?
I do not, but I can.
Yeah. Well, all right.
Maybe later.
Maybe off camera.
Yeah, off camera.
So let's delve a little bit into that, if you don't mind. The abandonment, feeling abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
What was the turning point when you realized that this is what you had been feeling? First of all, what does that feel like? Because I was not abandoned. I mean, thank God.
Yeah.
So what does that feel like? Because I'm sure that a large number of those who are listening today are going through those a passage where they're coming to grips with the abandonment. What was the turning point for you? Was it that song, or was it something prior to that?
No. I think altogether, I think over time I realized that there were certain milestones or certain conversations that I missed out on, that I just didn't have with my dad. And so, like, in a way, it feels like you, like I missed out on a ton of things that I should have experienced with my own father. And so, and I think, like, because I didn't, not saying that everything, if he would have been there, would have gone well.
Sure.
But I think that there are just certain things that, man, I think if he was here, I think just his absence alone produced the lack of opportunity to have certain conversations and experiences. And also, like, there would be no filling in. Like, instead we had this, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't have this, but instead I had this. And so, like, there's this, I would say, very real sense in which something is missing in my teenage years onward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Because we were designed as human beings to have both a mother and a father raising us up from the very beginning. Both there, bringing what only a mother can bring, only a father can bring. And when that father is not there, or the mother is not there, there is a void.
Yeah, for sure.
And voids have a tendency to be filled by things that are not so healthy.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely took part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is, there was a corner turned at some point.
For sure.
Where you realized what it was and you started working on that. What did you do, and what are you doing to recover from abandonment?
Sure. I think when I first realized it, I wasn't sure what to do. But I did sit down with my pastor, Pastor Brown, St. John Missionary Baptist Church, Springfield, Ohio.
Good friend.
No plug there, but
plug him all you want.
I'll plug him all I want.
Yeah.
But listen, I sat down with him. We talked a little bit, and he said, "Hey, I think you should probably do this." And that this was simply, one, talking with him, but also looking to possibly see if we could do some counseling together. And I think that was a step in the right direction. And so we actually did begin some sessions together where we began to talk and seemingly work things out. And I'll say, like a little while into it, it just kind of stopped, right? So, he just stopped kind of showing up. And I'm not sure. To this day, I'm not sure what happened. You know what I mean? I haven't asked what happened. And I'll say I didn't realize until a couple of months ago, maybe, that what that did there was I experienced abandonment all over again. And in one of the sessions, I very clearly remember me forgiving him for the things that I perceived were done, and also I would say admitting things that I had done that could possibly allow me to feel certain ways about him. But what I didn't realize is that once that session ended, and it didn't end with the result that I intended, with what I wanted, and the end result that I saw, like that created a bitterness within me that I would hold on to until recently, right? And so that's something that came out recently, was that I was still dealing with a new trauma brought on by a new abandonment. And so I'm currently working through that. And so there's this journey of pain, but I think now I am lowering my expectation, right? So forgiveness without expectation, but still desiring in a way, still desiring some form of reconciliation, possibly. I'm still open to it. I would say I'm the type of person who's never like, all things are always lost. But I will say it is whatever the other person desires, and also what God has for you. And so I think this time around, it's not what I want, but what the process allows for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever have the opportunity to talk to other men or another guy who is dealing with abandonment in order to share your experience, not just to commiserate, but actually to minister to them and let them know that there is hope?
Yeah, so it's funny because I was actually recently thinking about ways in which I could actually do that. So I would say at this point, I've talked about situations, and I think people have found ways to relate. But I would say I haven't exactly had the opportunity. But I know a lot of men struggle with this and have experienced abandonment, but I haven't exactly made it, I would say, a mission, nor specifically encountered someone who I've been able to just share with. Although I've shared with a lot of men, it hasn't been reciprocated. Like, hey, I've been through the same thing, except probably on with one gentleman who I think we all know here. But and I would say his opening up was actually, for me, a good experience to hear, because he's a very successful person, and just seeing that he still has some form of pain and some form of issues, and his father recently passed as well, and so I'm very open to the opportunity to be able to speak to and minister and I would say share my story with other men in similar situations.
Well, we should work on that.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm always coming up with ideas. You know that. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. My guest today is Thomas White. He's sharing his story. We'll talk some more with him after we take this short break.
We dads and father figures need each other. We need a safe, non-judgmental place to share our stories, challenges, heartaches, and joys. Fathering Strong is just such a place. A new online community of connected, engaged, and empowered fathers. Learn more at www.fatheringstrong.com.
Well, thanks for hanging with us. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and with me today is Thomas White. And Thomas, thank you for being transparent and sharing with our audience the struggle that comes with abandonment.
Yeah.
As I said, I was fortunate in that my father, who was abandoned, and my mother, who was also abandoned by her father, made a vow that they would not do that to their children. Yeah. And so it's because of that I, along with my 12 siblings, had the blessing of having our dad there. That having been said, with 13 children and a wife, he was gone a lot because he had to work his rear end off in order to provide for us. And he did, as well as as anybody could expect from a man in his circumstances. So even though we did not have a very close relationship because there wasn't proximity a lot because he's always working.
Yes.
And when he was at home, he had to spread himself 13 ways.
14.
14. And so the amount of time spent with him one-on-one was limited. But so even at that, there were some feelings of, I need more of my dad. That I didn't really know was there until I'm an adult. And we are working with fathers and learning about abandonment. And I realized I've got some feelings of abandonment because of that. But nothing that compares with not having a father at home at all.
Access.
So thank you for opening up and sharing that with us. So you appear to be on your road to, maybe there will never be complete recovery, but you are talking about it and you're sharing with other men in kind of a limited way, and we're going to be praying about other opportunities for you to share with men and to have them share with you, because
I'm definitely open to that.
Yeah, when you have that in common, I think that there's some mutual therapy that can take place.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And I've heard excellent stories about those, mutual healings that happen, and just men being set free from the weight of just holding things in, and also just not realizing, like, man, I've got these wounds. And I think the little boy within exercise that we did in one of our smaller groups, like, that definitely brought another component to me realizing, like, there were things that I wish were said, and what I'd like to hear
from your father,
from my father.
Yeah.
So that was a good piece for me to begin to work through as well.
Yeah. Maybe we should design a way to do that virtually and have a fathering strong group. Or on focused on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Something to think about. So now you are a father.
Of two.
Tell us about becoming a father.
Sure. Listen, I will. I'm a father of two, Isabella and Isaac. So Isabella is my oldest. She is 11 years old. She is my twin. She looks just like me, but I always tell her that she looks like her mom because it's the right thing to do. But she has her mom's eyes, which are these big, beautiful eyes. And I would say, like, she is an artist. So she's a bit more free-spirited in the sense that, I don't ever expect her to have a clean room, but I still require her to have a clean room. And so she didn't actually pick that portion up from me. She picked that up from her mom. And so I'm gonna say that, one thing that I learned in parenting is that children, my kids at least, they are many me's and many my wife Kabibi. They are many us, and so a lot of their characteristics and habits they got directly from us. And so one thing that I'm learning is that, hey, the things that I think that I may have needed at their age, I am the perfect person to help try to push them in the right direction, because it's just me all over again. And what did I need at that time? So Isabella, she is outgoing, very outgoing, and never meets a stranger, which we had to warn her about stranger danger for the longest, but everybody's a friend, and so she's 6th grade, and I will say, definitely a person who wants to do great things and is going to do great things. And so she's a very helpful child. And now my son Isaac, he is the opposite. He would like to be by himself. He's 8 years old. He would like to be by himself all the time if possible. But he gets his brains from me, right? I will say that. Very smart kid, but also like me, he little bit of a problem at school, right? And so,
Behaviorally?
Yeah. So behavioral problems at school, hard to explain, but, really good at math. I would say, I think my wife said that her uncle Jimmy was really good at math. And so, I never got to see him in action, but I'm thinking that's probably where he got the math skills from, because my math skills are terrible. But everything else, he's very organized, very systematic. So one time I took him on a job with me, because this is something that I do regularly. But I took him on a job with me, and we were building two dressers, and I showed him how to build drawers. And I didn't even show him how to make, like a system out of it, but he made his own systematic way of building these drawers for the dresser. And I'm like, oh man, so cool. But he loves Legos. He loves anything to build. And, it's fortunately, we're at a different time, because when I was younger, Legos seemed so expensive and so out of reach. But now it's like, you've got all these different kits, and so we're constantly getting Legos and things like that to put together. But man, he's a kid who, I would say wants to be good at something instantly. And so if he's not good at instantly, I got to push him to actually try and get better at things. But altogether, these are good kids. And like I said, just splitting images of me. My patience has been extended by miles just by being a parent. And so I'm grateful for them. I think it's been good for me to actually be able to bring them into some of my world and my work, because as an independent contractor and handyman, like a lot of people, they're excited to see kids. And they're like, oh, you brought your kids with you. And so I'll bring them with me to work, because they get an opportunity to make their own income. And so, there's not, they don't have to go far to, if they want to buy something, or, if they want to save up some money. I'm like, hey, cool, I'll take you to work with me. I would say they're less willing to work now, but sometimes I force them to come because it's a good experience for them. Because I want them to be real well-rounded, and I want them to at least know, hey, when I get older, I don't want to do this, but I did enjoy this. And so I'd like them to have more of a...
And they gain skills along the way.
Skills. So they know how to turn screwdrivers and use drills and all these things. But I want them to have a good idea of what direction they want to go before they turn 18. Yeah. When the world says we turn them loose. But I don't want to turn them loose. I want to, at least, hey, I've had these experiences. And, my dad has prepared me for the real world. And here's what I might, here's what I think that I'm good at. Yeah.
So you are responding to the abandonment that you experienced by being ever present, at least as much as you can, with your children. And one of the ways you do that is by taking them along with you whenever it's possible on the jobs that you go to. Oh, yeah. That's brilliant. And a good example of what one can do. Now, you have the advantage of being an entrepreneur, being independent, and being able to make your own schedule and able to take your children with you on to jobs. That's a wonderful blessing. Yeah. Probably not for everyone.
No, not for everyone. Listen, I definitely wouldn't recommend taking your kid to the factory. But I do think, like, if you have a skilled job of any sorts, and you can safely take your kids with you, I would definitely recommend it, just to give them that experience of saying, hey, like, my dad values me enough to take me somewhere to have an experience with them. Pay me for it. Pay your kids. Listen, if your kids work, pay them for it, even if it's something simple. Like, it's good for them to know, like, how
there's a reward.
Yeah, there's a reward for actually working.
Yeah, that's good. That's excellent. Our society has changed radically over the years, and we have seen fatherlessness rise along with it. Yeah. One of the ways it has changed is when we went from an agricultural society where children and parents worked together in the fields
Yeah.
Perhaps it was the father taking his boys out in the field. That was time together.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yes. And as we became an industrialized society, and the fathers went off to work and left the children, there was a trade-off there. And it's not so good because it reduced the amount of time that many fathers can spend with their children, because he gets off late, he's tired, he comes home, first thing he wants to do is take off his shoes and sit in front of the TV.
Yeah, yeah.
And so even at home, there's not that closeness, unfortunately, in so many homes. And we thought that the digital revolution would change that, but that brought its own things. Now, many fathers are caught up in their video games, their screen time that they're spending, rather than using that time for bonding with their children. Yeah. That's a whole nother topic. You have, because of your circumstances, been able to do it a better way.
Yeah, and you know what's funny though is that if I am out, like, my kids will tell you, they say that I work too much.
Yeah.
But I've been there, like, since, when I originally became an entrepreneur, I worked from home. I worked at home in my basement. I was there all day. And so they are literally used to seeing me 24/7. But when they went off to school, that's when I began to, do other things and work outside the house. And so this is pretty recent. And so now they say, when they don't come with me, they say I work too much.
But that's all they know. They're going
so
on their
it's
own.
an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Because your dad actually worked too much.
Yes.
But I'm actually home.
But he had to.
But I try to finish all my work before I get home. But sometimes I'm actually out a little bit longer than I want to be. Or there are some days where I'm like, hey, I need to make this amount of money to make me good for the week. And so, I can't take them with me because I'm already out of town while they're at school. And so I'm like, hey, and so then they're like, you work too much.
Got it.
Yeah. So this they've had most of this week off, all of this week off for Thanksgiving holiday. And, I took my daughter with me. My son, he's like, I don't want to go, Daddy. I'm like, all right, cool. But I took him with me, was it Monday? Took him with me Monday. And unfortunately, we didn't do anything. So I went to all my jobs, and they're like, nothing's here. So none of the product was there. So I couldn't assemble it. I couldn't hang TVs, none of that stuff. And so we literally just drove, went home, drove some more, went home. And so, but we had a good time together.
Oh, priceless.
Yeah.
Priceless. So not only are you busy as a businessman, small businessman, and you are, of course, also involved with some community groups. You're part of a men's fellowship, maybe some other things, and you also are committed to your church.
Yes.
So with all of that going on, how would you rate yourself as far as being a dad who is present for his children and for his wife?
Oh man, I'm going to say that I'm probably my biggest critic, and so I'm going to naturally rate myself lower than possible. And so is this a 1 to 5 scale, a 1 to 10 scale? I mean,
you pick one.
All right, I'm going to go with an easy scale, and we'll go 1 to 5, and I'll rate myself about a 3. How's that sound? So that way the number's not too big.
No judgment here.
Too small.
No judgment, just conversation.
And I would say that because, I would say I don't necessarily feel pulled from left to right. I don't feel like there's a huge commitment not commitment, but there's this huge pull that's saying, hey, you got to choose between your family or us, mainly because they make it very convenient to have early morning meetings. And so I'm typically going to be home at a reasonable time, or, some of the time commitments for like trainings and for service, things like that kids are welcome. And then, even with, well, I'm having a brain fart right now. Even with the gathering, we recently had a comedy show, and I took the kids with me. And so I took the kids with me to the comedy show, and, they were well received. Everybody was excited to see them, meet them. And so, there's not this huge pool to say, hey, you have to choose between us and your family. But it's like, hey, how can we begin to incorporate family in most of these settings? But there are some settings where we just can't, right? So, but I do think, there are times where, I'll go on a retreat. The kids are excited for me to leave sometimes, and then, yeah. So, and I would say, just as much as, I would like to paint a picture that everything is perfect, but I think in reality, my kids, they get tired of me. They want to miss me. I want to miss them, And so I think I'm very much so the type of person that's I would like to miss you at some point in time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with missing people, because I think that if you don't get the opportunity to miss people, you won't know that, I actually enjoy being with you all the time. Because if I'm with you all the time, there are times where I'm going to be I just want to be away from you. But it's when I'm away from you that I discover, no, I actually just enjoy being with you.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. I'm more impressed with you and the way that you're managing your parenting even more now than I was before. So thank you for being able and willing to share that with us. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you, Thomas, what you would say to a young father with young children who is struggling with feelings of abandonment, and doesn't know, where to turn, how to get some relief when it comes to that. So stay with us, and you stay with us, and we'll be back with a wrap-up of Fathering Strong after this timeout.
Do you know a new father who could benefit from a basic introduction to healthy fathering principles? POPS 101, a free online course consisting of 4 one-hour sessions in English or Spanish, could be perfect for him. POPS 101 lays out practical steps toward becoming the protector, order keeper, provider, and stabilizer his child needs. Learn more at urbanlight.org.
Welcome back. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams. That is Bruce Stapleton, who is behind the camera. I call him the Wizard, and so we appreciate him. My guest today is Thomas White, and Thomas is sharing with us concerning his fathering journey, and it's fascinating to hear how he's able to manage the many things in his life without in any way giving his children the short end of that stick. In fact, I would say if your children are happy when you are not going to be around, that's a good sign. That actually is a good sign.
Yeah. It has to be. It has to be. Like I said, my son, though, I think it's funny because, and I'll say this real quick, but there was a time where I came home and he was crying. He was like, I'm like, why are you crying? He's like, because I was wondering where you were. And I'm like, I haven't been gone that long.
That is really special.
But yeah. But that made me like, oh man, like I think I'm definitely
you're doing some things right.
Yeah. Because it's like, man, I missed you too.
Yeah.
But it's cool. And Isaac is also my very sensitive child, and I mean that in a good way. He's emotionally in tune, right? And so. In Isabel is the opposite, right? So to getting a hug from her is like pulling teeth. Like I have to force her into a hug, and even then it's one of those things where it's like, it's awkward. Like kind of like stepbrothers.
Yeah.
When they came in for the hug, that's how she is every time. But Isaac, he's more, Daddy, can I have a hug? And I'm like, you don't have to ask for a hug, just come get one. And so just another contrast between my kids being totally opposites. But And I think that's probably why they argue so much.
Yeah. Well, that's awfully sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
So there may be a father listening,
Mm-hmm.
and he has come to realize that he is suffering from abandonment.
Yeah.
And, of course, your story, as you already shared it, opened up our conversation about dealing with it.
Yeah.
So what would you say? What would be your advice or counsel to a person? Maybe it could be a female, but a person who's listening and they are experiencing the hurt of having been abandoned by one or both of their parents. What would you say to them as a way to encourage them?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that I would say is that you're not alone in experiencing what you've experienced and feeling what you're feeling. And so what's helped me a lot is being able to share, almost sharing my way into the right spaces and places, sharing my way into I would say counseling, sharing my way into groups where I'm not the only one who's experienced a father wound, and also being open to the healing process, be open to forgive, be open to reconciliation where reconciliation is possible. But I think the biggest piece is understanding that it's not your fault that you were abandoned or that you feel abandoned, but also that you don't have to, you can begin to heal. And so, sometimes, beginning the healing process is where you'll begin to be okay, right? And it's okay for things not to work out the way that you want to, but when you begin the process of healing, you start this journey of becoming whole, and so you'll in time become more of what you'd like to feel. The pain may never go away, and that's something that I'm realizing, is that my pain may never go away, but it may become more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent.
Mm.
Pain as opposed to anger.
Yeah.
If you're feeling angry, it's very important
Yes.
to work through that through forgiveness.
Yeah.
How important is forgiveness?
Yeah, forgiveness. And this is why I brought up my bitterness again, because when you begin to grow a root of bitterness, that's where the anger comes from. And so if you begin to become angry, it will hinder you from moving and advancing in certain areas of your life, and you won't realize it. You won't know what it's hindering until you actually begin to let those things go. And so if you wonder why you can't advance in certain areas, it could be bitterness. It could be unhealed pain and unrealized traumas that you're carrying around. It could be the weight that is literally keeping you stuck where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And we do recommend counseling. It could be that you need some professional counseling.
Yeah.
It could be from a licensed therapist, or perhaps your pastor has experience in that, or there is a pastor in your church who's experienced in Christian counseling.
Yeah.
We highly recommend that because that's a part of your healing process. It's very, very important that if you need counseling, that you avail yourself of counseling that can help you.
Yeah.
Thomas, we are just so very grateful that you're willing to come in and tell us your story, to talk about those wounds, and how God has helped you along the way to be healing and to be doing such a great job as a father. You're an inspiration, brother.
Yeah, it's good to hear that.
Appreciate
Good
it.
to hear that.
Appreciate
Really
it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
This has been the Fathering Strong podcast. We are just excited that you joined us today, and we invite you to take advantage of the other resources available through Fathering Strong. There's our weekly podcast, our weekly blogs. There are devotionals and courses and all sorts of resources available at www.fatheringstrong.com. Please check it out. Join us again next time when we'll have another edition of the Fathering Strong podcast.
Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a not-for-profit organization serving the needs of families and children for nearly 30 years. Your support helps us continue turning the hearts of fathers to their children while meeting some of the immediate critical needs of struggling families with small children. Contributions of all sizes are welcomed at www.urbanlight.org.
The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries, with technical assistance from the Momentum Group, and Harold Rayford provides the theme music. So thank you for listening.